Warden Paul Crump has been up to the brink of doom and back down again 6, 8 times, something like this?
It's been 11 times, I think, for Paul on dates, and about 40 continuances in relation to his case for over a period of 8 years. And this in itself is mental torture. These men live from day to day, and of course, with this pressure, I'm inclined to think that they die daily with it.
For 9 years, Paul Crump has tried to tell his story. Either nobody listened, or nobody cared, or nobody believed. The crime for which he stands convicted took place on a Friday morning, the 20th of March, 1953, at the Chicago Stockyards.
Hold it. Wait a minute. Hey, better move that car, unless you want to get sparks all over it.
Charles Baker, assistant in personnel. Fred Rush, plant guard. In that bag, the payroll. more than $17,000. Ted Zukowski, captain of the plant guard, a family man, 4 kids. Every Friday morning, the same routine. Paymaster and guard join Martin Carlson of the credit union. In that box, more than $3,000. And every Friday, up the back stairs to the cafeteria where the employees' checks are cashed. Like clockwork, a ritual familiar to hundreds of employees. I was on rewrite that morning when a call came in from police headquarters to the city desk. The most daring daylight robbery in recent years was climaxed by a vicious assault and murder. Something had to be done, fast. The police knew it. The cry for justice would soon be heard. Something just had to be done. I'm John Justin Smith of the Daily News. Somebody told me Paul Crump would make a good story. 9 years ago, he was brought into Cook County Jail, convicted along with 4 others of the murder of Ted Zukowski. The other 4 drew prison terms. Crump alone was sentenced to the chair. This is the man who will throw the switch. Jack Johnson, warden of the cast iron jail. And yet, even the cons will tell you that there's no more decent a guy. No one of deeper understanding than the old man. The old man's got a problem. He doesn't believe in taking human life. Yet his sworn duty has already called upon him to execute 2 men.
when I first came into the jail here, was first assigned to the jail, Paul had an altogether different philosophy than he has today. And as you know, we're not interested, of course, in the court action or in the sentence itself. This level here of the institution, we're interested in the rehabilitation of the man. And I would say Paul Crump is an example of a rehabilitation program.
Well, wait, you say a rehabilitation program. You mean you think he is rehabilitated?
Well, I would say yes. His entire philosophy has changed. He has an altogether different view on life. He has a greater feeling for his fellow man. Today he can sit down and discuss many of the problems that arose and in the past and problems that face him today. And he speaks and talks of them in the sense of attempting to work them out.
Look, a man walked in your jail here 8 years ago, and today he's a different man. Can you take it and tell me what happened to Paul Crump as an individual that changed him?
Well, by taking the man out of the atmosphere of a caged animal, by allowing him certain freedoms within the institution, by having him become involved in programs within the institution. Well, in Paul's case here, we gave him a job one. We put him to work in what we term a convalescent tier. We allowed him a position of responsibility.
Doing what?
Well, in this case here, in this convalescent tier, he has charge of invalids, fellows down there that are sent in from the hospital itself. These fellows are, in some cases, amputees, men that have had ulcers and are on the way to recovery. He has done a fine job down there.
He's an orderly down there?
Well, you could term it in some sense orderly, but in the institution we term it tier clerk, and he has complete charge of the tier and the responsibility of each one of these men placed in his charge in that
and
area.
this responsibility, for instance, is one of the things that's gotten at Paul Crump. Is that it?
Yes, understanding responsibility, and I think this is the first time in his life he's ever really accepted responsibility of knowing the needs of his fellow man. When I first came in, he was very belligerent. He was angry at the world. He didn't actually believe in anything. He thought that the physical power of a man was the determining factor and rule. But over the period of the last 4 or 5 years now, he's completely changed. He doesn't have this belligerent attitude at all. He has accepted an entire new philosophy. He has an understanding of the problems that face other men around him for the first time. He has accepted these problems and attempted in his own way to, shall we say, bring about an answer for these people. He has become very sympathetic with people within the area in which he's in charge.
What happened to him?
Well,
He came in here as an animalistic creature, and what happened to him?
He has become involved in actions within the institution that which he recognizes the feelings of his fellow man. And I have a feeling that because of these things, his attitude today has definitely changed.
I can't get it out of my mind, Jack Johnston, that you're wasting your time with Paul Crump. You let the man dress, you rehabilitate him, you've improved him from his animal state, and yet he's going to die. Do you think this is right?
Let me say that you've emphasized punishment for 250 years in this country, and it hasn't worked. You still have a steady increase in crime on the outside. Capital punishment accomplishes nothing.
Quite obviously, society is reluctant to kill this man. There were no eyewitnesses to the crime. The principal testimony against Crump came from 2 people. One, the Libby guard, Fred Rush, identified Paul by his voice only. 4 words. "Give me your gun." And these were hastily shouted through a mask. The decisive testimony came from Hudson Tillman, who already had confessed to the crime. Only 4 men were observed at the scene. It was Tillman who implicated the 5th, Crump. In 1954, the Supreme Court of Illinois reversed the decision of a lower court, and Crump was given another trial. Again, he was found guilty and again condemned. Did you have anything to do with killing that guard at Libby's?
I most certainly did not.
Nothing at all?
Positively nothing.
Where were you? What did you do the day somebody killed somebody else out at Libby's?
I was with a woman. I was in a woman's bed.
Where?
At the exact time that this thing was happening.
Where and whose?
The lady's name is Faye. Faye Hinton. We got to see at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, maybe, you know.
And this would have been on Friday, March 20th, 1953, right?
Early morning of Friday, 1953.
What time did you go to sleep?
I would say we went to sleep about 7:30, maybe even later than that, like I said. It might have been 8 o'clock.
In the morning, March 20th.
Daylight.
3 hours before the robbery out at Libby's, right?
Yeah.
And you slept until when? About 1 o'clock in the afternoon?
1 o'clock.
2 hours after the robbery. And did she ever testify in your behalf?
And she testified, but
What did she say?
she testified to just what I said to you,
That
that
at
I
the
was
time
with
that
her.
that man was killed, you were with her. Is that what she said?
That's right, but
Where is she now, do you know?
no, I don't.
Have you ever heard from her?
I heard from her a few times until the public ridicule. She was held up. She was ridiculed so much by coming out and testifying that I was with her and under the circumstances under which I was with her. And I was married at the time, and she was married but separated. Both of us were separated. And you know what type of an impression a testimony like this make upon people.
All right, after you left Faye's, where'd you go?
2 hours after I left Faye, I picked up my wife on 35th Street. We went on a little shopping trip.
That afternoon, Paul and his wife went to a barber shop. Oh, and this is pertinent. One of the robbers that was identified at the scene of the crime wore a goatee. The affidavit of the barber who worked on Paul that afternoon positively states that his face was completely devoid of a goatee. Later that afternoon, Paul put his wife on a bus and made plans to see her that night. The plans never materialized. At 9 o'clock, he was picked up at Hudson Tillman's house and charged with murder.
I'd like to know why on the evening of Friday, March 20th, you went out to Tillman's house. Out in Morgan Park, was it?
Yeah.
What were you doing out there?
I went out there after learning from a fellow I knew. He's a co-defendant in the case, Eugene Taylor.
Yeah.
I found out in my conversation with Gene that a robbery had been committed out at Libby's.
How did he find out, do you know?
Yes. He informed me that he was one of the participants in the robbery.
And what did you go out to Tillman's house for?
Well, from what Gene said, Tillman had ran away with more than his share of the loot.
You were going out to get it back, is that it?
I wasn't going to get it back. I was going out there to rob Tillman.
To rob Tillman?
Yeah, I was going to rob Tillman.
All right, Paul, back to March 20th. You left your wife on 43rd Street and you were waiting for a bus out to Morgan Park. What happened then?
I see Eugene Taylor, and he says, yeah, he says, you just the guy I want to see. I asked him, would he give me a lift? He says, yeah. So I got in the car.
Why did he say that to you? You're just the guy I want to see.
Well, after I got in the car, he told me. He says, asked me, did I know where Hudson Tillman lived? I told him, yes.
Where did Hudson Tillman live?
Hudson Tillman lived on 111th, I don't know the exact address.
In Morgan Park?
Yes. He says, well, I've got to see this guy. I says, why? He says, man, he's got some dough about us.
Did he tell you where he got that money or where they got the money?
No, not at that time. When we hit State Street at about 47th, this flash come on. He had the radio on, and this came over the radio about four-armed bandits sticking up Libby McNeil and Libby Plant, you know. And
killing a guard.
And killing a guard, yeah. And they named the amount of money that was taken. And he says, that was my score. That was my keeper.
Eugene Taylor told you at that moment that he took part in that holdup.
That's right.
And that's the first you heard of the Libby McNeil and Libby robbery, right?
That's right. I started questioning him with regards to it. He says it was a split up out there, and they couldn't stay together. And that Hudson had taken more than his half of the loot and had cut out with it. It was supposed to have been about $6,000 to $7,000 involved that Hudson ran away with. See? So I told him, I said, look, if it's this much dough involved, man, I want some of it. If I take you out there, show you where Hudson live at, we run into Hudson, you know, if I can squeeze this money out of him, baby, I want some.
How would you squeeze the money out of him?
Just to be frank, any way that I knew how. We parked across the street right in front of Hamp's pool room. Went around to the side of the house and knocked on the door.
The police commandeered the Tillman house when they discovered that a car he had borrowed and abandoned was the one used in the Libby robbery. Tillman himself wasn't home. He'd skipped town. Paul and Gene were the first to arrive, and before any questions were asked, they were taken into custody and held for 3 days.
Lieutenant told me when I was at 11th Street the first time he picked me up that if he was going to find the nigger that committed the damn job out there at Libby's that killed a white man, and if he had to tear down nigger town, he was going to find it out. And that if I didn't come in at about 12 o'clock, I think it was the next day, and tell him where this fellow Hudson Tillman he was looking for was at, he was going to bring me back down to 11th Street, and I wouldn't come down there from off of the rack except as a corpse.
All right, they bothered you for a couple of days, and then they turned you loose.
A couple of days, it seemed like an eternity. You have no idea of how it would feel to be strung up by your hands and punched and beat around.
Why did they turn you loose?
They turned me loose because they didn't have anything to connect me with that crime. Said himself that he checked my alibis and things evidently because he said that I had an airtight alibi.
He said that when he first turned you loose.
He turned me loose. They wouldn't even book me for disorderly conduct.
All right, Paul, what did you do then? What happened to you?
I went home. I was in a daze. I was in pain. I went home. I knocked on the door of the house, and my wife had come down, and she was there. She opened the door, and that's all I remember until about a couple hours later, I fell out. I was in a fever. It sweated me until I was in a fever.
You walked in the house
and
you fainted. Is that the idea?
Right.
This was your mother's house?
It's my mother's at 1231 West 110th Street.
In Morgan Park?
In Morgan Park.
And how long did you stay there?
I stayed there until they came back and rearrested me again. About 3 days later, I was like I said, I was in this fever.
March 26, 1953. Hudson Tillman confessed to the Libby robbery. He named Paul Crump as triggerman. His mother's house. His mother, Mrs. Lonnie Crump, was the first to awaken.
The backyard was full of police. They'd come right in with their guns drawn. And it frightened me so. I was so frightened. And I heard a pounding at my door, my back door. And I went to the door. And I looked out, and there was lots of policemen out in the back. They rushed in, asking where was Paul. Asking me where was the money. My son John was in the bedroom. And so they asked who he was he called. I told him no, Paul was downstairs, sick in bed. Some went in the furnished room. Some went down on their knees, crawling around. Said they was looking for money, asking where was the money. So they rushed downstairs to where he was in his place. They broke the glass out the door to get in. Some went into the bedroom where my son was laying sick. He couldn't even stand on his feet. So my daughter started to protect him, help him. And they told her to keep her hands off of him because if they didn't, they'd take her down. So they reached and got a belt that was bad, belonged to my son-in-law, and taken him and tied his hands behind. And they pushed and shoving him along. And just as far as I could see the little still push himself, told him to run. Because they wanted to shoot him at me. Just as far as I could see, they were still shoving him in.
They rearrested me.
Took you back down to 1121 South State.
They kidnapped me. That's what they did. It wasn't even an arrest. The way that they did it, it sounded like something that come out of one of Hitler's dialogues, the way he treated people.
Did they knock you around some more?
Yes, they knocked me around. They came
and that's when you came out with what they called your confession. Is that it?
That was a couple of days later. They sweated me for a couple of days after they picked me up the second time. and you...
I got a good question for you. Why in the world do you suppose this guy Tillman implicated you in this murder case? Why did he say you, of all people, was the person who had shot the guard?
You speak as if this is a $64 question. This is nothing hard to figure out. People, if you just want to know, all you have to do is go over and check the records in the criminal court. They've got 5, the man was out on 5 armed robberies. He stood to get life on each one of them.
Talking about Tillman.
That's right. He stood to get life on each one of those charges. Plus the fact there's always been bad blood between Tillman and I. My brother was going with his wife. My brother was going with his wife, and his sister too, and I was having relationships with some of the ladies in the family there, and all of this, plus the fact that Tillman was just a punk in my sight. I mean, it was something to be pushed around and kept out of the way. He was a dope fiend.
Did he drink?
He was a dope fiend, yes.
The testimony of a narcotics addict. Enough to arrest a man, but not enough to indict him. There remained the grim formality of getting a confession. As it happened, the process involved a series of bitterly contested maneuvers by the state's attorney's office. And a promise made to Paul's first attorney, Bill Gerber.
The first assistant state's attorney, Richard Austin, John, asked me to see him with regard to Paul Crump. I conferred with Mr. Austin at that time, and I asked him permission to talk to Paul, which he granted. I told Paul that anything he stated to the state's attorney was agreeable with me because I wanted him to tell them the truth. However, I did not want him to say anything outside of my presence because I was his attorney. He assured me that nothing would be done at that point. I then asked Mr. Austin that if any statements were to be made or any statements were to be taken by my client, that he was to notify me, and we had an understanding to that effect. The next I heard, a day or two later, that confessions had been obtained from Paul Crump and others. And I also heard and later ascertained that these confessions were witnessed by 6 or 8 reputable people from the county of Cook, some who lived 40 or 45 miles away from the criminal court building. And these people tried to keep the attorney who represented a man in a capital case, knowing that he represented them, away from him when they took a statement of that nature.
Did Crump get a fair trial the first time out?
Well, John, it wasn't a fair trial. I never believed it to be a fair trial. That's why we took it up to the Supreme Court. And apparently the Supreme Court felt as I did. They reversed the case and said he didn't get a fair trial. At the time I undertook the defense of Paul Crump and talked to him, I thought he was innocent. During the defense of this case, I thought he was innocent. When we went up to the Supreme Court, I thought he was innocent. And frankly, I still think he's innocent. I think this is a tip to the police that you did do it.
I said to the police that I did do it because at the time, and with the pressure and brutality, the long, lengthy interrogation, I was feverish. I had a temperature of 103.6.
Anybody push you around?
I've been strung up for 3 days.
How did they
with
string
my
you up
hands
and
behind
where?
my back.
Where?
It's 1121 South State Street.
And they strung you up by what
Old
for?
Stockyard Street, by my arm. By
Over
my
a
arm.
door or
They punched me in the stomach. It was something out of one of them 35-cent novels. That's why people don't believe these types of things happen. The police. The police in Chicago.
2 days you were at Stockyard Station.
That's right.
While they talked to you.
That's right.
Did you have any sleep at Stockyard Station?
No, I didn't.
Did you have anything to eat?
No. One of the fellows that was in the cell next to me says, what happened, man? I says, I don't know. They come in and they handcuffed me behind my back. He said, well, baby, you're going to get it. I said, what you mean, get it? He said, that's it. You're going to get it. It's all right, walk. And I take it easy, walk. Then I turn around, watch it there, you know, and then I spin it, turn me around in a circle. Then I heard the door open, and hands grabbed me on the shoulder and by my arm, you know, pin my arm, so I wouldn't be able to move from side to side. Crump, yes, he said, turn around. I said, what? Turn around, goddammit. And then we were stripped naked.
And you stood up there on the bench, and what happened?
We stood on the bench, and that's when we were interrogated. They started shooting questions at us. Where's the money? Over and over again. What makes you niggas think that you could get away with pulling a daylight robbery of one of the biggest companies in Chicago? We're going to burn you, all of you. You were the guy that had on the blue suit. You were the guy that had on the checkered coat. They beat me, they punched on me. They were telling me about just the detailed activity of the people that participated in the robbery. They said it to me over and over again until it became a thing that I knew by heart. Their theory, if this was their theory, I knew it by heart. See? I even knew the part that they wanted me to play it.
I confess, and you would confess, and anybody else that was in the position that I was in would confess.
And as a result of that, you spent 9 years in this jail.
Right.
Is that right?
9
Waiting to
years
be executed.
Right here, and no one believing a fragment of what I said. No one caring, really, because no one, you the first one that's come out here to interview me in this regard, to speak to me in this regard. The state's attorneys, none of them has went out of their way. I learned later on that this is supposed to be one of their duties, is to help a defendant prove himself innocent, but no one has ever attempted to raise their hand to see whether or not the things that I claim is true. The only thing they wanted was a conviction. They got the conviction, and that's it.
They got the conviction, Paul, and now you're sitting in the Cook County Jail waiting execution.
Yeah.
How many times have you been up there within a day or two?
No, I've lost count. I don't even like to think about it.
Twice I was arrested and twice brutalized, Paul says. We deny this emphatically, the police said at his last trial. Here's the condemned man's version.
I hung there, I don't know how long, and I didn't think I was going to ever get down. And he said, now what did you do with the money? I said, I don't know anything about the money. He says, who was the guy that had the bag and the shotgun? I said, I don't know who had the bag and the shotgun. And I started praying. I started saying a prayer. And I started praying out loud.
What prayer, do you know?
I started saying the Hail Mary. I started saying Our Father. And I was saying it. First I was saying it to myself.
Why would you say the Hail Mary? You weren't a Catholic
Because I wanted,
at the time.
yes, I was. I'm a Catholic. I've been a Catholic ever since 1946. And I said it because I wanted some help.
Did you get help, Paul?
No, I didn't get any help. When I started praying, they came in and they started.
Grab on, Paul. Paul, what did they do?
Well, one summer, I don't know who it was. One come up to me, he says, and he hit me in the stomach, and he told me to stop praying. He says, you black son of a bitch, so what do you know about God? You should be in the jungle. Then, he said, what would the What would the white mother of God want to do with a black son of a bitch like you?
Paul's prospects, such as they are now in the hands of an able young civil liberties lawyer, Don Moore.
Our civilization's act in killing Crump does more harm to our traditions of decency and civility than Crump's act, if he did it, in killing that guard. Now, that's a fact, and the reason it's a fact is because this killing is done in cold blood. That killing wasn't. I don't think that our government should kill anybody in cold blood, ever, under any circumstances. There's no excuse for it.
All right. How do you feel about Paul Crump's charges of police brutality and the police denial of those charges?
I would say that the overwhelming probabilities in this case are, I may be wrong, and this is my opinion, but this is what I think, the overwhelming probabilities, based on the record of the Chicago police made over the last 30 years, are that Paul was beaten to within an inch of his life, and if I had a bet on it, that's what I'd bet, because that's what I think, because this is what the Chicago police have been doing to get confessions. The memory of man runneth not to the contrary. This thing has got a history going back 40 years. The history is disgraceful. The tradition is bad. It's worse than bad. It's unconscionable. And this has been going on. I'm not talking just about Paul's case now. I'm talking about the beaten and battered people that I've seen with my own eyes, fresh from police stations. All the people that allegedly fell down the stairs. All the people that allegedly accidentally ran into the cell door. All the beaten and bruised and battered people that have been beaten up in these Chicago police stations for the last 30 years. Now, I'm not saying all police officers do it. I'm not saying that any police officers do it all the time, and I'm not saying that I'm sure they did it to Crump, because I don't know. What I do know is when a man goes into one of those police stations and is held incommunicado, he's fair game.
Monday morning, March 26th, 1962. A familiar silence came over the maximum security block that was once called Death Row. The warden received a phone call from the United Press. The news from Washington had just come over the wire. Paul's final appeal had been denied by the United States Supreme Court.
Paul, I just received unofficial word that the Supreme Court has turned down your last petition. Have you given any thought to this, or has counsel talked to you?
Yes, he talked to me all about it. And he let me know that I have exhausted all my legal rights as far as appeal.
Well, do you intend to allow him to ask for commutation?
Well, it's my intention to go along with him in whatever he thinks best to do for me next.
I see.
I'm glad that I was able to accomplish something of worth through all of this long ordeal. And I hope, naturally, that it won't be terminated in the manner that you and I know could happen. If this is the will of God that this should be done, then I'll have to accept it. I'm more concerned about, especially with you and your views, and the relationship that we've more or less had over the years. I find that I'm a little more concerned about the effect that it'll have on you.
Well, Paul, you know, it's a job that has to be done in case this does come about. You know my viewpoint relating to capital punishment. I firmly believe that it isn't a deterrent in any sense, and certainly it can't be called punishment. I think that you yourself have proven that rehabilitation is possible regardless of what the crime may be that a man is charged with or found guilty of. And Paul,
Saunders was the state with Paul and Björn going to låta next one of the Franke. And Roberts France med skriver samman i konstlatsen över Blåberg. Mer från mer.
I've did some capers, I've did some things. That's why I can't feel too embittered about my situation, because I've did some things, man, if I got caught for them. I've been in penitentiary.
You never killed anybody?
No, I've never killed anyone, never. But just more or less prove what goes around, come around, Well, they didn't get me for those things, but they got me for this here. So I can't, I tried to work up a tremendous indignation, or anger, and a bitterness, but I can't do it. Because ever since I was 16 years old, I've been out there hustling.
Long years of making himself over. One thought remains uppermost in Paul's mind. The thought of death. The virtually certain knowledge that all his efforts toward redemption will end in the electric chair.
There's no getting away from it. You can escape for a few moments in reading. I've managed to do so in my writing to a degree, but it's always there, just like the bars that surround you. It's like the cold steel that you see your arm fall up against accidentally when you're trying to relax, and you think cold death. Then you think about the fellow upstairs that ain't here with you. You think about their troubles, because their troubles are your troubles. And when one of them get turned down, you turn down. Because it makes you know that the people that are ruling upon whether they live or they die, are actually, well, to them, they're just you. Just he is a statistic, and you are a statistic. And you think, well, I am as less valuable to them as one as he is. And so he is me. And the person died, the man is executed. You think, you died too. Because you know the process. You've been in the death cell, I've been down there. And I know the deathly hush of it. I know the horror of seeing people that you've come to know and like and who you have did things for and who have small things. If it's just giving a cigarette, they're giving you a cigarette. You see them preparing to go through this ritual, taking your life, and it's all seemed like a part of a macabre dream, a nightmare, but you know it's not a nightmare because you can feel the beating of your heart. You can hear it pound in your head. You can hear it's going to break out. It freezes you up from your heart to your throat, and you think over all of this, well, is this torture, this mental torture, this physical torture, will it actually prove anything to anyone? What will be gained out of it? And then, after 12:01, and you know that the man is dead, you find that there is no feeling other than a numbness within you and the knowledge, that someone that you knew is gone, that there's a vacuum in life, that there's, well, you can call this fellow's name as you often do accidentally, if you have been intimately associated with, and you'll never answer, never answer. You start thinking in terms of their parents, the effects of them waiting out these long, anxious hours and praying. And you wonder about prayer, and you wonder about God. If he hasn't completely destroyed everything that you have been taught that God believes, that God stands for, and this will make you a little cynical, and this will make your fight to sustain a belief in mankind a little harder, a belief in God a little more hard. And the thing that affects me most is that after a week or so has passed, nothing has changed. After the headlines have died down, nothing has changed. Another fellow will come in for murder. Another fellow will be sentenced to death for murder. And it just go on and on and on in this vicious, barbaric circle. I mean, it confuses you so until you don't know whether you're in a nightmare or whether or not you're really living. I found that I have to reach out at night. I work hard and exhaust myself so I can sleep. Then before sleeping, I have to reach out and grab to the bars and hold them. I guess this is just my way of holding on to reality, holding on to my sanity, the possibility that I won't just slip away and be no more. I don't, but that's the way I have to go to sleep.
Thank you.